2018 was a year of huge moments. Yes, whether it was Marvel's Avengers Infinity War dominating the box office or the royal wedding of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, it felt like every month something big was happening. And of course, the WWE was no different because it was here that we saw the return of a former champion, the sad vacating of a world title, and the rise of one of the biggest women's stars in history. But how did it all happen? Well, join us today as we take a deep dive into the entire story from start to finish in the WWE in 2018, a year in review. When we last left off, Brock Lesnar was the Universal Champion on Raw, AJ Styles was the WWE Champion over on SmackDown, Roman Reigns was still struggling to get over with fans, and Dolph Ziggler was about to change the game forever after having vacated the United States title in late December. At least, that's what he wanted us to believe. But in truth, he'd end up coming back at the Royal Rumble on January 28th in the most unceremonious fashion possible, with him spending only a few minutes in the match before being eliminated. Before we get to that match in more detail though, we first have to jump over to NXT, because the night prior to this, they held another classic as TakeOver Philadelphia saw Ember Moon retain her women's title against Shayna Baszler, Aleister Black beat Adam Cole in a brutal street fight, and Andrade Cien Almas go to war with Johnny Gargano in a match of the year contender over the Black and Gold brand's world title. But despite Johnny Wrestling's best efforts here, once the bout was over, he'd be beaten. And to make matters worse, as he was leaving the ringside area after the fact, Tommaso Ciampa returned from injury and proceeded to lay his old tag team partner out. Yes, possibly the greatest feud in NXT history was now really getting going, but that wasn't the end of the weekend's highlights because, at the Royal Rumble the following evening, the card featured two triple threat world title matches when AJ Styles retained over Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, and Brock Lesnar got the better of Braun Strowman and Kane. Then, in the men's Rumble match, Shinsuke Nakamura outlasted the likes of John Cena, Seth Rollins, and Roman Reigns to become the first Japanese-born star to win. And he wouldn't be the only performer from the land of the rising sun to walk away with a title shot by the time the night was over, because after that, in the first ever Women's Royal Rumble, Asuka overcame Sasha Banks, Becky Lynch, and both Bella Twins to book her spot at the Showcase of the Immortals. Of course, for as big of a moment as this was though, that wasn't the end of the surprises, as well the Empress of Tomorrow stood in the ring with the Raw and SmackDown Women's Champions Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair. Following the bout, Joan Jett's bad reputation started playing over the loudspeakers to herald the debut of former UFC Bantamweight champion Ronda Rousey. Yes, the most dangerous unarmed woman on the planet was now a WWE roster member, but Asuka, Bliss, and Flair needn't have worried about her quite yet, because before she went after any titles, Rousey would first have to take care of some business with the McMahons. And the next major step in this story took place at February 25th's Raw exclusive show Elimination Chamber, as there, after Kurt Angle accidentally let slip that Triple H and Stephanie McMahon were planning to manipulate the baddest woman on the planet due to her embarrassing them at WrestleMania the year prior, Rousey challenged the pair to a tag team match the following month. As well as this, we saw the pay-per-view debut of Woken Matt Hardy, and Roman Reigns earning the #1 contendership spot to Brock Lesnar's Universal title. After that, we saw the SmackDown exclusive pay-per-view Fastlane, where Randy Orton won the US title from Bobby Roode, Charlotte Flair retained her SmackDown Women's title against Ruby Riott, and AJ Styles fended off the challenge of John Cena, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Dolph Ziggler, and Baron Corbin to keep hold of his WWE title. Then, just a week after Raw hosted the Ultimate Deletion match on March 19th, Daniel Bryan showed up on SmackDown to announce he was medically cleared to come out of retirement once more, and that he would be doing so at the next pay-per-view. Yes, it was the moment fans had been waiting for, something many thought would never actually happen. But before the American Dragon made his triumphant comeback, WrestleMania weekend started on April 6th with Goldberg, Jeff Jarrett, and the Dudley Boys being amongst the newest inductees into the WWE Hall of Fame. Then the next night, TakeOver New Orleans saw Adam Cole become the inaugural North American champion in a classic six-man ladder match, Shayna Baszler win the NXT Women's title from Ember Moon, Aleister Black become the new NXT World Champion after pinning Andrade Cien Almas, and Johnny Gargano get a measure of revenge over Tommaso Ciampa in what was probably the bout of the weekend. But it wasn't the end of the weekend though, because the night after that, WrestleMania 34 kicked off in front of a packed Louisiana crowd with Seth Rollins defeating The Miz and Finn Balor in a hugely underrated showing over the Intercontinental Championship. And things only got better from there because after that, Charlotte Flair ended Asuka's undefeated streak in one of the greatest women's matches ever seen. Ronda Rousey had a blow-away rookie showing when, alongside Kurt Angle, she beat Triple H and Stephanie McMahon, and then The Undertaker returned from an apparent retirement to get a quick win over John Cena. But even this wasn't all, because following on from there, Daniel Bryan came out of retirement himself to partner up with Shane McMahon as the two went on to defeat Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. After this, AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura had a solid WWE title match with AJ coming out the victor, and Braun Strowman won the Raw Tag Team titles with an 8-year-old boy called Nicholas, all before Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar main evented once more. But this time there was no Seth Rollins coming down to the ring for the swerve ending. No, here the big dog and Brock would go one-on-one, with Lesnar coming out the surprise winner come the end of the match. And as the show went off the air, then fans continued to boo Reigns right out of the building and continued their boo even more the next night on Raw. Yes, it was obvious that at this time, the crowd were still just not into Roman as a main eventer. Next up on April 27th, WWE hosted their first ever Saudi show when we had the Greatest Royal Rumble. And here we saw a great steel cage match between Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns, The Undertaker defeat Rusev, Seth Rollins retain his Intercontinental title in a fatal 4-way match against The Miz, Finn Balor, and Samoa Joe, all before the main event that saw the biggest Royal Rumble match in history take place. That's right, 50 men would enter here, with the bout going on for 1 hour and 17 minutes, and Braun Strowman being crowned winner by the end of the night. Then over on SmackDown the following week, after Paige was announced as the new general manager of the brand on account of Daniel Bryan's return to the ring, the Iconics made their main roster debut and helped distract Charlotte Flair for long enough that Carmella was able to successfully cash in her Money in the Bank contract on her. Of course, the Queen still had her rematch clause though, and she would choose to execute this at May 6th's Backlash. But even here, despite her best efforts, she was unable to win her title back from the Staten Island Princess. And she wasn't the only challenger failing on this night, as elsewhere, while Alexa Bliss was falling to new Raw Women's Champion Nia Jax, and Shinsuke Nakamura's return bout with AJ Styles over the WWE title was ending in a double disqualification, Samoa Joe was finding himself unable to get the better of Roman Reigns. Yes, Vince McMahon was once more all in on the big dog as his top guy. Meanwhile, on NXT, we'd see TakeOver Chicago 2, where not only did the Undisputed Era's Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish successfully defend their tag team titles against Danny Burch and Oney Lorcan, but Aleister Black got the better of Lars Sullivan in the world title bout. Then, once this was over, the main event saw round 2 take place between Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa, and it was in this one that after DDTing his opponent onto the exposed wooden floorboards underneath the ring mat, the Blackheart was able to even things up at 1 apiece. Yes, the feud would continue, much to the delight of fans, of course. And after that, we moved on to Money in the Bank the next night, as there, after a returning Bobby Lashley made short work of Sami Zayn, Daniel Bryan would take on Big Cass, and AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura continued their feud when the champ this time beat the challenger in a last man standing match. And after Braun Strowman and Alexa Bliss became Mr. and Mrs. Money in the Bank respectively, the Goddess cashed in her briefcase later that same night to not only beat Nia Jax for the belt, but also to screw original challenger Ronda Rousey out of it in the process. And while this would lead to Ronda looking for revenge a few months later, the first woman to get her shot at taking on Alexa would be former champ Jax at July 15th's Extreme Rules instead. Unfortunately for her though, she wouldn't be able to win her gold back in this one, just as Asuka would be unable to win the SmackDown Women's title from Carmella later in the show. And the male challengers weren't having much better luck either as it happened, because not only did Rusev fail to beat AJ Styles for the WWE title, but in the main event of the night, Seth Rollins lost an awesome 30-minute Iron Man match against Intercontinental Champion Dolph Ziggler by a score of 5-4. Meanwhile, back over in the developmental brand, things were heating up, as just 3 days later, the NXT United Kingdom Championship Tournament returned. And it was there that after beating Jack Gallagher, Flash Morgan Webster, and Travis Banks in successive rounds, Zach Gibson earned himself a shot at Pete Dunne's United Kingdom title. But while Gibson wouldn't win this subsequent match, he could at least take some solace in the fact that he'd be one of the star attractions of NXT UK's weekly show once it began airing soon thereafter. And as far as the US branch went, well, that was still in a very good spot too, as it was being carried by an all-time great feud between Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa. So of course, when Ciampa won the NXT World title from Aleister Black on the July 18th episode of their weekly show, it meant round 3 between the former DIY teammates at August 18th's TakeOver Brooklyn 4 would be for all the marbles. And while the obvious ending was for the babyface to get the big win here, in the end things took yet another twist when Ciampa retained, and just a few weeks later, Gargano underwent a soft heel turn by laying out Aleister Black. That's right, while Ricochet and Kairi Sane were starting their runs as North American and NXT Women's Champion respectively, the Black and Gold brand's top program was only adding further shades of gray to its palette. Meanwhile, however, as far as the main roster, at August 19th SummerSlam, after a show which saw the Revival lose to the B Team and Charlotte Flair steal Becky Lynch's thunder at the last minute by winning the SmackDown Women's title from Carmella, the Roman Reigns vs. Brock Lesnar feud saw its next chapter take place when the Big Dog finally toppled the Beast to win the Universal Championship. Elsewhere on the show, not only did Ronda Rousey beat Alexa Bliss to become Raw Women's Champion, and Dean Ambrose returned from injury to stand in Seth Rollins' corner during his bout against Dolph Ziggler, but Daniel Bryan and The Miz would finally take their rivalry to the ring once more. And even if The Miz won this one, it was clear based on the finish that things weren't over between the two yet, just as it soon became clear things weren't over between Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair, as after apparently turning heel when she laid out the Queen, the Irish woman morphed into The Man, a modern-day Stone Cold type character who quickly became a mega hit with fans. Yes, seeing her as the one who'd been wronged in this situation given the fact she'd spent months working her way up the ranks only for Flair to then get a title shot immediately upon her return, audiences everywhere refused to boo Becky. So because of this, WWE decided to quickly change plans as she instead became the biggest anti-hero we've seen in years. Next, we saw September 16th's Hell in a Cell, a show which saw the main event bout end in a no contest when Brock Lesnar interfered right as Roman Reigns was about to get the better of Braun Strowman. Elsewhere on the card, not only did AJ Styles and Samoa Joe have a great match for the WWE title, and Randy Orton defeat Jeff Hardy inside of the Cell, but Becky Lynch would finally win the SmackDown Women's title after beating Charlotte Flair. And it was also around this time that the first ever all-women's show was announced, WWE Evolution. That's right, it was finally time for the females to get their time to shine, as by now the Four Horsewomen and others had built up such a name for themselves they were able to carry an entire show on their own. Before we'd get there though, another international special took place when on October 6th, Super Showdown was held in Melbourne, Australia. And it was there that not only did Daniel Bryan finally get his victory over The Miz, and The Shield briefly reunite once more to take out Braun Strowman, Dolph Ziggler, and Drew McIntyre, but Triple H and The Undertaker had one final singles bout together with Shawn Michaels and Kane in their respective corners. Of course, we say singles bout here because this wasn't the end of the program. No, just a month later things would continue on, in fact, with this one being a tag team bout which saw the Heartbreak Kid actually come out of retirement. Before that happened, however, shockwaves were sent through the industry when on the October 22nd episode of Raw, Roman Reigns announced he was having to vacate the Universal title on account of serious illness. Yes, it was a truly stunning moment and one of the saddest of recent memory. That said, the show would continue on as later on during that very same episode of TV, Dean Ambrose turned heel on Seth Rollins to fully end the Shield once more. And with Roman now out for the foreseeable future, Becky Lynch was one of the company's rising stars right there to pick up his mantle, because at October 28th's all-women's pay-per-view Evolution, the man stole the show during a last woman standing match against Charlotte Flair. Not that this was the only big moment of the night, however, as aside from it, Shayna Baszler regained the NXT Women's title from Kairi Sane, Toni Storm beat Io Shirai to win the 2018 Mae Young Classic, Trish and Lita returned for a tag team match to defeat Mickie James and Alicia Fox, and in the main event, Ronda Rousey managed to get the better of Nikki Bella. Yes, this one was truly one for the books, as it was the first of its kind, something which we'll no doubt see more of in the future as the division continues to grow. And after this, on November 2nd, WWE had their second Saudi show of the year when they hosted Crown Jewel. Yes, it was here that we saw Shinsuke Nakamura defeat Rusev, Shane McMahon win a tournament to be crowned best in the world, Brock Lesnar beat Braun Strowman for the vacant Universal title, and Shawn Michaels' return to the ring. That's right, in one of the most infamous matches in WWE history, DX and the Brothers of Destruction fumbled their way around the ring for almost half an hour, with Kane losing his mask and wig, and Triple H pick up an injury, leaving HBK to pick up the slack and wrestle most of the match by himself. And even though Shawn did put on a great performance here, all the other mishaps that happened has meant that this match has gone down as one of the wildest returns to the ring we've seen to this day. So thank goodness we had something a lot better only a couple of weeks later on November 17th then, when NXT gave us TakeOver War Games. And here we saw Aleister Black defeat Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa retain the brand's world title against Velveteen Dream, and the union of Pete Dunne, Ricochet, and the War Raiders overcome the Undisputed Era in the titular War Games match. And with this to live up to then, it was now up to the Red and Blue brands to put on a great show at Survivor Series. How would they do that? Well, by making some last-minute changes to the card in order to shake things up. Of course, some of these were intentional, such as Daniel Bryan turning heel to win the WWE title from AJ Styles on the prior episode of SmackDown. But others, meanwhile, well, they were unintentional, as was the case when, during the build to her showdown with Raw Women's Champion Ronda Rousey, Becky Lynch invaded the Red brand on the November 12th episode of Raw and got a legit concussion when Nia Jax punched her in the face, with this having a real butterfly effect on the course of wrestling history. So with Becky not being cleared to compete at Survivor Series then, it meant that Charlotte Flair would have to step in and take her place. Luckily for the man, however, this incident only served to get her even more over with fans than she had been before. And she wasn't the only one who was catching fire, because elsewhere on the card, the now heel WWE Champion Daniel Bryan felt completely reinvigorated when he stepped into the ring for a true dream match against Universal Champion Brock Lesnar. As for the rest of the card on that night though, well, it would mostly be made up of 5-on-5 elimination bouts, with little of note taking place. So it's just as well weekly TV was there to keep the mid-card moving heading into December, because there, after another special live Starrcade event on November 25th and a tribute to the Troop show on December 4th, WWE held their final big show of the year, TLC, Tables, Ladders and Chairs, on December 16th. And the mid-card would be a big focus of this one, as it turned out, because not only was The Bar having a classic against The New Day and the Usos over the SmackDown Tag Team titles, but Carmella and R-Truth were getting some shine when in the finals of the Mixed Match Challenge, they faced off against and ultimately defeated Alicia Fox and Jinder Mahal. But that wasn't all which was going on here, because after Braun Strowman won a ladder match to earn a shot at Brock Lesnar's Universal title, and Rey Mysterio made his return to WWE with a win over Randy Orton, the Planet's champion Daniel Bryan was able to retain his new customized hemp belt over AJ Styles in their big-time rematch. Of course, not everything about this show was met with love by fans, though. No, quite the opposite, as the now medically cleared Becky Lynch lost her SmackDown Women's title to Asuka, something which came as a disappointment to many. However, little did fans know at the time, this was all leading to something even bigger and better for Becky, something nobody saw coming. That's right, we were about to head into a great time for WWE, and that's because, while there was a lot of good to come from 2018, 2019 was about to see the rise of not only the women's division to levels we've never seen before, but also an underdog champion that finally got his shot at the big time.